Now, in the first part, we talked about how there have been major payoffs and major threats by Dr. Dr. Fauci, and that he wanted her research information, and that her house had been broken into, and there was no search warrant. They called her, I don't know, some term. They sentenced her to silent treatment for 5 years. They sealed her records, and they wrecked her career, and they bankrupted her, and they threatened her husband. So all those things were talked about in the first part of this. This is part 2. And the NIAID was Fauci's major organization, and he paid off these research people in the tune to millions of dollars.
And the whole world is listening to his advice for how to handle this current pandemic. How do we know that what he's saying is what we need to be learning?
What he's saying is absolute propaganda, and the same kind of propaganda that he's perpetrated to kill millions since 1984.
We know.
Killed millions since 1984. She will eventually talk about how they use vaccines in Italy, and this is why their death rates are some of the worst in the world. But they're using these vaccines to kill millions of people. And they're stopping real research and real scientific efforts. This guy is criminal. Might as well be mafia, medical mafia. Dr. Fauci, medical mafia.
Know from this study quite clearly that there will be a delay in progression significantly greater than for individuals who do not take the drug.
It started really when I was 25 years old. I was part of the team that isolated HIV from the saliva and blood of the patients from
saliva and blood of the patients. She's one of the research groups that did that.
France, where Luc Montagnier had originally isolated the virus.
Je pense qu'il y a toute une recherche à faire à ce niveau-là qui est négligée parce que
this was a confirmatory study, but Tony Fauci and Robert Gallo were working together then to speak.
And this Robert Gallo was also put under pressure. This guy, bad news.
In the story in a different way. At that time, Dr. Rossetti was out of town, and Tony Fauci says, we understand that you have a paper in press, and we want a copy of it. And I said, yes, there's a paper in press, and it's confidential, and no, I will not give you a copy of it. He started screaming at me, then he said, give us the paper right now, or you'll be fired for insubordination. And I just said, I'm sure when Dr. Rossetti gets back, you can have the conversation. And so Frank comes back, several weeks later, and is really bullied into giving Fauci the paper. Fauci holds up the publication.
Bullied into giving the paper and the publication. Then what do they do with it? They plagiarize it.
Of the paper for several months, while Robert Gallo writes his own paper and takes all the credit. And
so another individual plagiarizes it, take all the credit.
Of course, patents are involved. This delay of the confirmation, literally led to spreading the virus around, killing millions.
And the interesting thing about this, there are people that believe the CIA was instrumental using animal items, rhesus monkeys, in actually creating this virus so it would affect humans. And there are people that will testify that that's what they did. Okay. So, as we continue with part 2, this HIV solution wasn't even used like she set up. They changed her protocols or her use of this, a cure of this, while millions got infected in Africa and probably died.
Perhaps no one expressed the anguish of AIDS better than New York writer Larry Kramer. But he was even more angry at the federal government and the pharmaceutical industry. One person who felt Kramer's fury was NIH Dr. Anthony Fauci.
It's still been crushing to me to think that I didn't know my work in 1999 was something that had been avoided. From 83 and 82, when the virus was isolated.
From 81 to 82, and it was the virus was isolated, and it was avoided.
The virus didn't have to wait until 84 to be confirmed. Think of how many people, the entire continent of Africa, lost a generation as that virus was spread through because of the arrogance of a group of people, and it includes Robert Redfield, who's now the head of the CDC.
Robert Redfield, the head of CDC, another group that should not be administering medical advice, and I believe a private group paid by our taxpayer dollars.
Right along with Tony Fauci, they were working together to take credit and make money, and they had the patents on it and tailored them to IL-2 therapy, which was absolutely the wrong therapy.
Okay, so they had the patents, they tailored it to wrong therapy, and they made a lot of money on it.
And had that not happened, millions wouldn't have died from HIV.
How can a man who's
Quote unquote, millions would not have died if they'd used the right therapy and not abused the patents.
giving, any person who's giving global advice for health own a patent in the solution in the vaccine? Isn't that a conflict of interest, or shouldn't it be?
It is a conflict of interest. And in fact, this is one of the things that I've been saying and would like to say to President Trump: repeal the Bayh-Dole Act.
Bayh-Dole fundamentally changed.
So the Bayh-Dole Act, and this is where colleges and universities are going after patents right and left and making money on it. And it needs to be repealed.
Change the way universities approach technology transfer. And you can see that best in the statistics. Universities obtain 16 times as many patents today as they did in 1980. Now, everybody's getting more patents, but still, universities' share of all patents in the United States is more than 5 times greater than it was before Bayh-Dole. The situation has gotten so bad that one information technology industry official has publicly referred to universities as, quote, crack addicts, unquote, driven by, quote, small-minded tech transfer offices addicted to patent royalties.
Addicted to patent royalties. We're going to end it there on this part 2. This shows the abuse of money, power, and authority out of the universities. And again, the universities are paid by government tax dollars for a lot of their research. So again, this loop again is pathetic. It's all about money and power and abuse thereof. Again, this is Roger Martin from Billings, Montana. This is part 2 on the Plandemic. This comes from part 1, but we're breaking this into parts because it's so important to understand the tentacles on this and how these things are cyclical and how they're using tax dollars to make money with the universities, and the paths from those universities are used to feed the universities. Again, very abusive. And the abusive powers of not only the university, government, and these patents, but of leading people in private organizations suggesting just the opposite or wrong medical advice to destroy millions of people's lives. Think about that. This is part 2 of the Plandemic, which came from Plandemic part 1. Good day.